With us now for more in London is Chris Nelson, President of the British Chamber of Commerce of Philippines. Good to see you again, Chris. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, good morning to you, Kathy, and good morning to all your viewers.
Right. So what do you make of the extension of the quarantine restrictions in Metro Manila and the strict lockdown in Cebu?
Well, look, I mean, if I look at, obviously, we've always said we're guided by the health principles. Saying that, of course, Metro Manila has now been extended to a general community quarantine. It's been like that since the 1st of June. That's obviously helping some businesses. Obviously, I was also reading yesterday, I think the President is planning to reach out and discuss with certain business groups how the private sector can also help rework the economy. We're also pleased because we have a number of members who work, obviously, in the restaurant sector. And that's going to start in terms of in-house and dining 15th of June. And of course, we also have people who are in the hairdressing that start on the 8th of June. But obviously, we'd like to see how we can move to a modified GCQ and even less restrictions and more opening of the economy as we move forward. So obviously, yes, we're happy to see the general community quarantine in Metro Manila because that's where obviously the bulk of the business is. And obviously wish and hope that Cebu moves quickly and can obviously manage the cases there and become into general community quarantine soon.
And this is all happening as businesses where you are in the UK are starting to open up, the non-essentials included. Compare and contrast for us the manner in which the government there and here are managing their respective lockdowns through the pandemic.
Yes, I mean, it's interesting what they've opened up. So if you say the UK, where I start first, they've actually opened up as of Monday non-essential stores. However, what has not opened up yet is the hospitality trade. So, for example, there's no in-dining yet, whereas in the Philippines there is. And that's actually a huge and a very significant sector for the UK. And there's a lot of discussion over the distancing, which of course currently is 2 meters, and there's a lot of pressure and things being mounted to actually reduce it to 1 meter. The other thing which I would talk about, so I think what the Philippines has done is open up some sectors, and I've got to give credit to the Secretary of Trade and Investment, who's listened, of course, and does push for those. The other area which I'd like to contrast actually is the economic support. The UK, and it's obviously costing a lot of money in terms of borrowing, has supported the economy, particularly through the furlough scheme. This is keeping people employed, where the government has paid 80% of the salary. And that has actually been considered to be one of the great successes. Now, of course, one of the major challenges in the Philippines is the unemployment figure. I think if I'm correct, Kathy, I think it was around the last time I saw the figure, it was about 17 million in the Philippines. So clearly that links back to the discussion that I was listening to, and is obviously one of the major ones, which is the stimulus bill. And we, along with many other chambers, really feel it is very urgent and it's greatly needed that we could do a rise was passed in the lower house. And obviously we'll look forward to what stimulus could be given, particularly for SMEs and SMEs.
Right, just a correction there. It's 17%, at least 17%, which is record unemployment, something we hadn't seen since 2005, putting that down to 7.3 million Filipinos without jobs. Right. And the Philippines is now having that distinction of holding one of the world's longest lockdowns. What impact has that had on the British businesses here in the Philippines? Because majority of the British firms here are the MSMEs.
Correct. So, yeah, thank you for the correction. Yeah, 17% unemployment, which is obviously very high, and we like to work together to see that lower. Yes, look, 50% of our members are MSMEs or SMEs, and clearly they're under a lot of pressure. We did a survey, a number of them now opening up, but a number of also considering potential layoffs. Now, I think the key is how can we work to keep opening up the economy? And we appreciate that, and I think in this respect, I've also got a quote from Secretary Lopez, where health and the economy are not divergent. We should work together, right? We understand managing risk. And I think also what we need to see created here is that if more businesses can open up, if there can be support for the SMEs, that will drive demand. Our concern is that if we don't give that support, then obviously a number of those SMEs will be potentially in trouble and may close. So that's why, along with many others, we really welcome the Arise bill, and we welcome also any economic support that can be given to those companies.
Have these companies on the brink of laying off given a timeline as to when they'll pull the trigger? Is it the third, fourth quarter? Have they given any indication?
No, they have not, but obviously what they're looking for, and a number of them have opened up now, and they've obviously talked about the various challenges they've had in terms of, obviously, number one is obviously a complete reduction in demand. Number two, of course, is logistics and so forth. So I think obviously the key challenge is they haven't given us a date, but I have to assume that you've got to look somewhere around the fourth quarter would be an estimate. So in other words, stimulus and getting people back in, because let's not forget the Philippines is a consumer-driven economy, and that's got to be supported, and we've got to see more businesses back in. So creating that demand is important. And I'd just like to also make a reference to CREATE. I do think CREATE also would assist in terms of reducing the tax, and that's been noted. Of course, there are other areas that's got to be looked at. But I think that has to be, in our view, and we appreciate it's going to require borrowing, or at least funding, and that is it's got to be combined with a very significant stimulus, particularly with very badly affected sectors such as tourism, hotels. And the other one I'd just like to make a reference, if I may, is that we also work, of course, with the Philippine Chambers of Industry, and they made a point the other day about what support banks could give to businesses. But for that, that's also incorporated in the Arise bill, and that's also getting support to allow the banks to treat those loans and assist them on how they will provision for those loans. So I think it's a total package, both CREATE and stimulus.
But how is the Chamber gauging the pace at which the fiscal stimulus response is being addressed here in the Philippines? There are still bills filed in Congress. When you compare that relative to ASEAN peers, which have already introduced multiple fiscal responses through their own lockdowns.
Yes, look, obviously we'd like the Philippines to move, obviously, and pass those bills. I mean, if I contrast it not just with, obviously, in ASEAN, Kathy, but if I also look at the UK, as we've been discussing this, obviously, they have borrowed heavily. Obviously, it's a different economy, but I think what's being shown here is that the pandemic has affected economies worldwide. People really see the need to start those economies up. And also, of course, the challenges you've mentioned and rightly said was that you've got 17% unemployment in the Philippines, and clearly everybody wants to bring that figure down. And I think it's fair to say that 90% of all the companies in the Philippines are MSMEs or SMEs. And obviously, in the case of our chamber, we have 50%. So it's very important to support those companies. So, yes, look, we'd like to urge a stimulus package as soon as possible because it's needed.
And I see that you're scheduled to fly back to Manila sometime next week, Chris. I mean, you're ready to board that flight back with face mask in tow?
Yes, whatever is required. I mean, look, I've been here. I'd like to go back. I've been 17 years in the Philippines. My wife's a Filipino. My children are dual citizens. Obviously, it's our home country as well. So looking forward to going back. I'm sure the flight will be interesting. However, yes, hope to be back on the 27th. And obviously working closely with our members and giving the support we can from there.
Right, and I look forward to virtually welcoming you back to Manila when you touch down here. And tell us what happens. You keep safe, Chris. Thank you as always.
Well,
appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. And like this to all your viewers, I like to keep safe. And yes, I look forward to virtually meeting you. And of course, it'd be nice to be in the same time zone. But thanks again for everything and wishing everybody a great day.
All right, Chris Nelson of the British Chamber of Commerce Philippines in London.